The Riddles of Barabbas, Chapter 8, The Parable of the Fire. Barabbas is questioned about the death penalty at the Mount of Olives, then speaks in Jerusalem area, near the place where burnt offerings are put. The day after the Feast of Tabernacles was now over, the scribes came up to Jesus with some inkpots and some paper. Some Pharisees were there with a woman they'd caught red-handed, acting in adultery, no telling what the man did. They made her stand before the group, since pulling her from bed, and asked Jabar if law required they throw rocks at her head. Now, this is not quite typical of J. Barabbas preaching. Usually, his lesson is more puzzling, less teaching. He told them by their law they should, of course, by all means, yes, but only if they'd never sinned or had any regret. The Pharisees then watched as Jesus wrote, but kept quite silent, wrote nothing down, but moved on with no more intent of violence. This story seems to me a saving grace for this John's Gospel, except historians think this wasn't part of the original. So I'll keep showing metaphor and irony, I reckon, except this one small segment, John 8, verse 1 through 11. The light of daytime is the sun, the light on earth is fire. Whoever follows torches' light must surely be alive. The Pharisees found fire alone, said, "This must be put out." The fire replied, "I know from where I've come and what about. You all judge by human standard, but I've no opinion. But lack of judgment doesn't mean I do not have a mission. But I will truly choose my path, as fuel turns into ashes, lighting up the world to see in sparks and flicker flashes. My Father is the spark who sent me to consume this path, and in his light and mine you'll see destruction of our wrath. The fire proclaims itself, the other witness is the spark. From when or where it comes, you're either in light or the dark. And if you fully knew the fire, you'd know incendiary, figured by confession or by evidentiary. The fire then pointed to the spot where offerings were put. Nobody understood the riddle that he put afoot. Your offering will turn to ash, and then I'll fade away, while you're still doomed to die in unrepented sins that stay. They wondered how the fire could die without an act of man, and where it went they couldn't go, what realm not touched by hand. But we are made of earth and water from the well or pond, while fire's not made of earth, it's made from stuff that seems beyond. If from this metaphor for earthly fire you wrongly see a God who's fit for worship, you commit idolatry. They asked, who should we recognize? We're caught here in the middle. He answered, I've been telling you since starting of this riddle. The fire will have a lot to say when it consumes your flesh. The spark is true, what's said of you will be lit up in a flash. They didn't understand how now the fire spoke of cremation. The Father fueling fire could be a human in persuasion. The flesh that fuels the fire, he never leaves the fire alone. The fire will always please the one who lit it on his own. And as the fire persisted, it was coming plain to see that all the fire had claimed to do were things to be believed. When holding to lessons of fire, you're really its disciples. Consumed by fire's spirit, you're not worried for mere trifles. Once you hold fast to fire, you'll know the truth and be set free. A truth of searing pain, how life can end in misery. They claimed as kin of Abraham, no sires in slavery, but chains fire meant to break weren't to be captive, but to be. The fire referred to sin and vengeance, the infernal chain, results of temptation that give sins a chance to reign. but a ritual fire that's been sparked to condemn has a permanent place in the family of sin. A man who is punished by burning alive is only a slave and is freed when life ends. But Abraham brought Isaac and some fire up to a mountain. He tied his boy and raised his blade. An angel came to stop him. A ram was shown to take his place, to kill and burn for reasons. Now Jews may argue not killing their firstborn in some season. This practice of not sacrificing your sons is a practice that comes from your fathers and mums. If you were really like Abraham's children, you'd climb with the fire up the hill like a pilgrim. You'd be logs in the fire letting embers consume you. Unless angels showed up with proxies that would do. But here you are trying to put the fire out, not climbing the mountain in fear and in doubt, not setting up bonfires to tie up your children, for fire to feed on for some strange superstition. But the Jews said to him, "We are all children of God, not some savage ritual we see as flawed. If your father was God, you'd love me, don't you see? Then you'd see the forest by burning one tree. Why is it my language is not clear to you? 'Cause you cannot grasp the way it could be true. You think that my language is the devil's lies, but really it's truth that's been metaphorized. You could prove that I was guilty of sin. If I meant what you think, that would be your way in. But since I speak in metaphor, you've no clue what I'm saying. It's not as though you'd get it if attention you'd been paying." The Jews surmised a demon was what Jesus spoke about, but Jesus' riddle here was surely answered fire, no doubt. Jesus sought no glory for himself choosing this riddle, but boasting for the traits of fire with convolutions difficult. The light that solves this riddle can't see death or rot or waste, but as it licks the surface of the flesh, maybe it tastes. The listeners were sure these boasts must come from demon swagger, because they thought he glorified himself with boast and braggart. Said Jesus, if he boasted of himself rather than fire, the glory would mean nothing, the mistake would make a liar. But God gives glory everywhere, and all to his grand plan. When Abraham untied his son and killed the angel's ram, he rejoiced in seeing that day that fire burnt up that lamb. And when the burning sulfur raining fell down upon Sodom, Abraham was joyful for those not caught at the bottom. How could Jesus be when Abe rejoiced on days of fire? The answer's in the question of this ridiculous mire. Before aught was done or thought or planned by Abraham, the answer to this riddle, fire, could always say, "I am." But they thought he's a dreamer who's proclaimed some other gods. The Jews picked up some stones to throw, and found themselves at odds. And of the riddles J-Bar gave, this answer's a unique one. Vanished right before their eyes, the offspring of perdition.